Just look back, it's a fact. I can't feel this way. My head full of no control. Well, I feel the same. All alone, no one knows that you have forever changed my life. Why did you fix me? Do you think I'm brave? After all, looking back, oh, it's easy. As you say, you make me want to be. Together we stand for what's right. And together there is so much again. And together we're one and done. Around and down, now I'm not afraid. After all, you and I move every day. I and you are me. And together we're part of reality. And together we stand for what's right again. And together it all just makes our way. And together there is so much again. And together we stand for what's right again. And together it all just makes our way. And together there is some hope again. And together we're one and done. And together we stand for what's right again. And together it all just makes our way. And together there is some hope again. And together we're one and done.
Here we stand at the turn of the tide. I can see an innate desire. Sword in hand, warriors side by side. I can feel it, it burns like fire. Worlds collide, an unstable landscape. Side by side, but that's what this mandates. Be it might and unlikely allegiance. We will fight because that's the best day friends. No turning back, for such is our path. This day we find a glorious stand. Glorious stand. Our goal, our mission. vision is clear as we ride against a dark empire. By my soul, may the last thing they hear be the roar of this raging fire. Listen, be the savagery mindset. Not today, we'll let loose and find it. Brutal will define our reaction. Rip out the throat of each one in their fashion. No turning back, for such is our path. This day we find the glorious death. Fear not, my friend, for right is the path. They shall remember glorious death. Glorious. The angels have fallen, my allies are beaten and broken down. I shed not a tear. After all, this is why we are here. Oh, we were not supposed to win. If I'm to die tonight, I'll kill every demon that stands in my spine. Go! You must say me a fool. I stand on the skeletons of every goal. If I'm to die, well, this very night, we'll kill every demon that stands in us. No turning back, for such is our path. This day we find the glorious death. Fear not, my friend, for right is the path. They shall remember glorious death. Make them remember glorious death. Glorious
Hey guys, we're back at it, live streaming again. I always got like cameras here. I want to look at the chat down here. Let me get the AC off. So dang unprofessional up in this business, but it's a bit of a slower news week for the Rippaverse. And you know, I caught up with all the news. I mean, Saints and Sinners closed at over $500,000, which good for them. It made like probably like 30K because it was like 484, and then it closed at 515. So there was a massive what you would call it, like a massive run on that closing campaign, which makes sense. Zay Compix is asking how the new place is, and it's really nice. I got the bed frame in today, so I just set that up. And I was sleeping on an air mattress for like 2 weeks, but my sister got me a nice mattress, and my my dad got the frame for me. He got the foundation, so I have the foundation and the mattress, and I have the frame now, so that's all nice. I still have some posters to hang up. Still have some amiibo, so I still have some unpacking to do. I started working a new job. I'm working nights now, which is probably why I'm going to be pushing from 6 to 7 p.m. Because it just works with my schedule better. I do a podcast, Hump Day Potpourri. Friday is going to be like the only day I'm going to have off because I got another job. So I got a full-time job working nights Monday through Thursday, and now I'm going to be working as a cook in a convenience store Saturday and Sunday. But I won't be working on Friday, so I'll be doing those Friday live streams. Also be doing Braxcast because I'll get up a couple hours before my shift and get it all filmed. Let's see. Can you pull up the free campaign at the end of the stream? Actually, Student of God, one, fantastic to see you in the stream. Hopefully you're doing okay. And we'll talk about Fiendish Free actually right now, because I meant to back it yesterday, but I was at work yesterday and it launched at 9 Eastern and I was at work. But we will actually go ahead and stop screen, present your screen right here, and we'll do window right here. Boom. And we will add this to the stage. So, of course, this is the campaign that Student of God was talking about. This is the Fiendistry Chapter 3 Ravages. I did a Fiendistry overview, but so much has gone on that I need to kind of like skim through the books and rename it, but remember it. Of course, I forget his name, but basically, it's a high fantasy world where you've got this guy who's a monster hunter. And of course, he's got like a ragtag group of guys that follow him. One recently was this girl. I forget exactly what's the name for race. But it's like basically like seen as like a subservient class, and he kind of saves her from that life. But they're basically monster hunters. They have like this big city. They find someone who's dead. Let's see. And it's continuing the story from there. But I did an overview of Fiendish where I had it fresh in my mind and I gave a review on that. So if you're interested in Fiendish and you want like a look at the art of the book and what the comics are about, I did my overview on that. Of course, shameless plug. But if you're here, you like my content, I did an overview on Fiendish. And when I first uploaded it, I didn't have the audio, and I got like a bunch of comments like no audio, so I had to re-render the video and get it uploaded. It's absolutely hilarious. But I got that all sorted out, and I will back this probably like right after the stream. I will get like the basic. I won't do the $200 give me everything, but I'm just going to get probably. This main cover looks really cool. And of course, you got the dark cover. And I believe there are some secret perks if you signed up on the email list, because I got some access to some secret perks. And of course, oh yeah, here we go. We got Casimir, who's the hunter. You got Ragna. You've got, well, I'm not sure. Yeah, Ragna might be a new character. Oh yeah, but Nina is definitely not a new character. Rennie is an incredible creator. I'm so discombobulated, but Rennie is an incredible creator and a sweetheart to boot. She certainly is. I've seen her on a couple of live streams. I haven't talked to her personally, of course. If she does see this, I'd love to interview her on my podcast sometime. I'm super busy, but I'm sure I could set aside like an hour or two to pick her brain on art and talk about Fiendish and everything. And she did fantastic work on Fiendish. Her work on Fiendish is some of the best art I've seen in indie comics and comic books in general. Because her style, colors she works with is just so fantastic. Of course, she's got like a really deep lore, and it's just now like starting to get into it with this third issue. But yeah, Nina is his pet dog or pet Frostfang. You got Casimir, who's basically the protagonist. Kel is his sidekick. And then, look at this art. It's absolutely fantastic. The lettering looks so good. And there is just such a rich amount of color in these books. And of course, all these characters look really cool. And then, of course, you've got the really cool Fiendish logo, which I appreciate. Let's see. So for anyone who didn't, but we'll get back to the chat. So for anyone who didn't catch it live, check out the Rippaverse stream that Kanan and I did with Death Shroud creator Chad Larson. It was a blast. I was in on it for a little bit, but I had so much other stuff going on. I definitely ought to watch that. I did back Death Shroud, so I'm definitely going to read and review that one. So I'm pretty excited to get my hands on that. Let's see. So Student of God is telling Andrew, you got to tell any of the Represent people to offer a lenticular card on their campaigns. You're not Rippaverse family until then. I guess I'll be a bit of a grammar guy. No, I'm not sure. You know what I mean. But there and your, those are the wrong theirs and yours. But it's the internet. Nobody spells anything correctly. If she wasn't so busy with her own universe, I'd love to get her on a Rippaverse story, even just a short story. We're trying to get her on Control Z podcast at some point. And you watch Control Z as well. But Control Z is the podcast that I think Andrew hosts it most of the time, if not all of the time. And basically brings on artists associated with the Rippaverse and just talk about the process and everything. It's really cool. So Rippaverse channel, of course, it's not the biggest thing. It's got about 30,000 subscribers. But I imagine the algorithm suppresses new channels and indies pretty hard. I've got 146, but I'm breaking in through the algorithm bit by bit, little by little. But yeah, the Fiendistry campaign, already hitting 5 figures, which most indie comics do not do that. And of course, this is not even the first 24 hours yet. And of course, I haven't backed it yet. So once I back it, the numbers will go up just a little bit. But I imagine this is probably going to make, I don't know, at least 50 to $100,000, and which is pretty good for a third issue. And I think it's definitely something that is really, really cool to see. Definitely is going to have its audience, and this is an absolutely fantastic visually, and of course the narrative I think is really interesting because there's a really deep lore with Fiendish, and you really haven't gotten into all the things that make that really. So yeah, Fiendish is dope. Love that cover. I guess you're talking about, I'm not sure what cover you're talking about, Zaid. Whether it's Philip or Brandon. Um, um, but yeah, all of the covers for Fiendish are really good, and I reviewed the first, second, and the 1.5, and I did that as my overview. So whenever I do multiple books in a series, I call it an overview, and I did the Fiendish overview, but then now I'll just do the Fiendish #3 review when I get Fiendish 3. Because I'm all caught up on that series, which is a really nice feeling. But I think I might have to go through because I've got, you don't see them, but they're over behind me. But I've got a long box full of all the indie comics that I have either read or I'm not sure if I'm interested. But I think most of them I've read. So I've got like a long box full of them of books that like I don't need right now, and then I've got a short box full of stuff to read, and then I've got on that table there stuff that I want to read and review by the end of this month. But I've just been really slacking on that because I've got so much stuff going on in my life right now, which is it's nice, but it's also a bit it's a bit stressful. But yeah, I want to do Battle Beast #2. I got some genuine comic stuff to do. Of course, I bought the People 1 and 2 in that nice like blank convention cover. I'm going to read and review that. I know Zay Comics is in the chat, so I got that. I left it in its mailer. I unboxed it when I like a couple days after I moved in, so it's safe and sound in my apartment, and this is a nice place. It's a 2-bedroom apartment, so I've got one set up as the office space. The other is my bedroom. I talked about I have a pretty decent sized kitchen. I have a really tiny living room, but I think it's a pretty good spot, like right in the city where I live. So yeah, definitely going to try and get the People review done by this month. Of course, I got Battle Beast 2 as well, and I did review Battle Beast #1, and I really liked Battle Beast #1. So Image I think is still putting out good stuff. For the most part, I haven't read a lot of the modern Image stuff. I read all of Invincible. I really liked Invincible. I heard good things about Transformers, but Kirkman definitely has made capitulations to the woke mob. I mean, you just look at the Invincible show with race swapping Amber. Honestly, could have just called her a different name, and she could have just been a different character because Amber was just Mark's, I guess, Invincibles, whatever you want to call him, his first girlfriend. And that's really the purpose she served. So you could have just called her, a different name, like, Sarah Brown or whatever. And she would have served the same function, and you wouldn't have to deal with like race swapping a character. You could have just, hey, we just decided to, make a different character because Amber was too boring. But I don't know. The Invincible show, people like it. I think the action scenes are pretty good. I watched the first season, and that got me into reading the comics. And I read all the comics, and I really like the comics, except for the reboot arc, which was I think 22 in the trades, and that really just derailed it. So the ending of Invincible is like not the best, but the rest of it's pretty solid. And I just like a lot of the themes and the character designs and everything. And I like Battle Beast, which exists in the Invincible universe. And Battle Beast is probably one of the most interesting characters, and it's cool that he's getting his own series. So I've got #2. Still need to read it and definitely review it, and then of course need to do the People. And I've got a couple of genuine comic books I want, and I want to get that all done by the end of the month. We'll see if I do it, but hopefully you guys get a People review from me soon because I talked about it, and Zayd's been really nice to me. And I also have the cards as well. I'm not sure they're up there. I don't kind of want to get there. Let's see. I'm a religious reader of Witchblade, which the latest reboot has been fantastic. I'm not sure if that's Image or Dark Horse. Let's see. In other news, Rippaverse got a shout out from freaking Critical today in a video. Watch here. It's 10 minutes, baby. EFAP. Do you guys want me to EFAP this Thinking Critical video? Because I really don't have that much to talk about. Because I kind of caught up on everything I was doing last week. But if you guys want me to, we can go through this video, and then we might want to call it a day there. because I know Zaid Comics, they're live streaming at like 7:30, which is like 15 minutes from now. And I kind of liked, the old stream schedule was really nice, because I would stream at like 6 and you guys would stream at like 7, so I could get like a good hour of streaming in, and then I could just like push my viewing audience to yours. If you guys are still in the chat, but like I gotta push things back because, like I said, I do Hump Day Potpourri it's on Substack. Yeah, I post it on Twitter, and I do that with I'm his co-host. And we're doing Fridays basically, and it would run into like 6 o'clock because I start like around 5, and we probably go for usually about 90 minutes or so. So 7 o'clock is the time that really has to work, or I need. And since like I'm working nights, I'm shifting everything to later in the day. Used to have like a really good sleep schedule and wake up early. And it took me like years to get to that point in my life, and now I'm like taking it away because I got to pay the rent. But hey, that's just how it is. Like I'm not, if you guys want to support, the link is in the description. Of course, you can PayPal me a couple bucks, no obligation there, of course, since I'm not going to be an e-beggar. But if you guys want me to EFAP this video, I'm perfectly fine. And it's not like EFAP, just go, I guess reaction is probably the more apt description to use playing right now. But I could definitely remove it, and then we can do. But what's not? Because I was watching a little bit because I was busy all day. I had to drive like 45 minutes, pick up my laptop from a repair shop. Seems to be working again, which is nice. And then I went and I visited the people I was staying with, because I was staying at an inn that's about 45 minutes from where I was staying. And they opened a restaurant as well, so I had like I guess a brunch, breakfast / lunch, and it was a really big meal. He's a really good cook. If you're ever in Stratford, New Hampshire, go to the Independence Inn. Jefferson is really good. They're open Thursday through Sunday for lunch, and they make fantastic stuff. Fantastic people, and they took really good care of me. Very thankful for that. Let's see. I'll be honest. I absolutely hate EFAP content. I understand that, so I don't necessarily want to be like, oh, let's EFAP. But I think this is an interesting video to go through. It's just someone talking about the comic book industry, and I guess as a newbie, I could give my take on it, but I don't necessarily want to go ahead and be like, oh, this is I can't even get it correctly, but I don't want to necessarily be like, oh, it's the best video ever, or react to it in that sort of way. Let's see here. If you can share that. Can add that to the stage, and we can, yeah, there we go. This is how we do it. So I mean, if you guys, especially EFAPing other people's videos and streams, is extremely gay. That's just generally the mindset that I am in. But soon as God wants me to go with that, and I think this is one where it's like, hey, we can give some commentary on the comic book industry because it's related to that. He does mention the Rippaverse as well, and I give my takes on like why I support the Rippaverse. So we can watch this.
Dying.
Okay.
It's actually kind of breaking free right now. The old industry is dead. Marvel and DC on top, dictating everything. The diamond monopoly on distribution. Fans arriving at their local comic book shop every Wednesday like clockwork. That whole machine has collapsed. Marvel and DC, the titans of American comic books, now own less than 8% of graphic novel sales in bookstores. Manga crushed them, crowdfunding buried them, indie publishers ate them alive. And fans, we're living through one of the greatest shifts in the entire history of the comic book industry.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree with that. The comic book industry is certainly shifting, and you're getting a new batch of readers that are not familiar with the traditional model for comics. Of course, I'm 27, and the old people, like the really old people who were buying comics back in like the 70s and 80s, remember getting comics from off the racks from like drugstores and stuff like that. And then the rise of comic book shops. That's not something that really exists today. And a lot of local comic book shops are really in decline. Of course, I got some long boxes from my new local comic book shop, and I did buy a bunch. I got all my Invincible trades, and it's cool to go through the boxes and get back issues and stuff like that and see the new releases. Definitely going to be at that LCS to get Battle Beast, but buying stuff month to month is not really that compelling. And if you're going into an LCS to buy a monthly release, it's typically not going to be Marvel in DC. It's going to be more like Image or Dark Horse, stuff like that. Of course, Vatican City. I wasn't able to get Vatican City free. I lost the email for the review copy, so I haven't read that one yet, which I really want to read it because it was such a good series 1 and 2. And Freeze the finale, so I don't know how it ends. But that's one of the reasons like why I went into that LCS. Other than get some long boxes, like I don't care about Marvel and DC. I want to read Vatican City. So it's the indie scene that it doesn't have nearly as big of a market share as Marvel and DC did in the heydays. But they definitely have more popularity with the fans. Garfield is in the chat, finally made it. More live streams with Nick Weiser. Hopefully I can do that. I am going to be probably working on Saturdays. So going to have to figure out how to do it, but like a late Saturday night stream, I definitely could do. So it's just getting the schedules to line up. And he certainly is a cool dude. Definitely loved having that chat, and it was a really fantastic stream. That's on Nick Weiser's channel. I think it's 32 Flavors of Nick, and we did that last Saturday, if I remember correctly. And that was a fantastic conversation. We talked about Great War Separation 2. So if you haven't read Great War Separation 2, don't watch that stream because we go no hold bars. And of course, Andrew was on that stream as well, along with JT. So it was a 4-person round table. Fantastic live stream. Definitely would do that again. It's just about getting the schedules to line up. But we do have a back room in the Twitter chat, so I'm sure we'll hash out those details, and we'll get something done along the lines. It's just that I'm going to be working Saturday evenings, but hopefully there's one day where I can get out by 7 p.m. We do it 8 Eastern, and then we can do a 2-hour live stream, and I could definitely be up for that. So Saturday nights would definitely work for me. It just have to be a bit later than the time that we did on that Saturday, but definitely opening to doing live streams with Dick Weiser. That was a fantastic conversation. We all really enjoyed the conversation we had, and everybody who watched enjoyed it as well. You haven't live streamed for a month. You got to get back on the algorithm. I agree. It's just that I'm adjusting to a new sleep schedule because I'm working nights now. So I gotta get some reviews out. I gotta pump the algo. But yeah, I definitely 100% agree. I'm probably going to be live streaming at 7 p.m. So it'll probably work a little bit better because people get off of work around 5, sometimes 3:30 or so. Want an hour or two to decompress and just not do anything, and then when 7 o'clock hits, that's good. But of course, it's the time that people like to go out to dinner on Friday nights as well. But I generally feel like nerds like us, we don't like to go outside all that much. But anyway, we'll continue on with this video. And I think we'll watch
this is the change that nobody in the mainstream or media actually wants to talk about. For the first time in decades, comics aren't being driven by executives in spreadsheets. They're being driven by readers and creators who actually give a damn. Today, we're going to break down the 5 stages of this comic book revolution and why every single fan should be excited and a little bit worried all at the same time. The old system didn't evolve. It imploded. There used to be a shared language in comics. Continuity mattered. Stories built over years. Now, it's chaos. Marvel and DC launch, cancel, reboot, and contradict themselves every few months. Not to improve stories, but to keep short-term sales from collapsing. And when readers can't trust the roadmap, they stop following the road. It is a very strange comic book world indeed, where a character like Iron Man, the face of the MCU, with so much history and lore in comic books, can't even make it past 10 issues, couldn't make it 1 full year. Captain America, a bedrock institution of Marvel Comics for decades, one of the core members of the Avengers, the biggest movie franchise in the history of the world, barely hit 15 issues on its last run before it was outright canceled. Marvel Comics' latest X-Men initiative, From the Ashes, that was supposed to reset everything and revitalize the franchise after years of abuse, is already DOA. They're already rebooting and resetting everything after just 18 months. And DC Comics certainly have their own issues as well. Do you remember Night Terrors? The big event just 2 months into Dawn of DC that halted every single ongoing book that they had. That was a total editorial failure. We're seeing big name artists.
So Andrew wants the link. So I'm assuming he wants to get in here and we can give our commentary on this. Now, this is not like the call out thinking critical. I don't know him, but soon God wanted me to watch this video. I think it'd be an interesting one. And I was going to speculate wildly on the Rippaverse. Going to talk about like Norfolk a little bit, but the character profiles, I was looking over them, and they don't really have that much. So until we get Norfolk Glory stuff #1, whenever that is, sometime quarter 4 in 2025. But I did put this link in the chat, so you're welcome to come, Andrew. Come on, Andrew, and we can have a little discussion on this video together. I guess this is more like a reaction. I don't like the term like e-fapping, because it's really stupid. But if like the video is like relevant to what we're talking about, which is comic books, then we go. But we got Andrew in the chat. Welcome, good sir. Hopefully you're having a good Friday.
I'm having a fantastic Friday.
Yeah, and so you're more fantastic now that you're talking to me, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay.
One of the best parts about being part of the Rippaverse is chatting with other genuine comic book fans. That is one of my favorite things in the world right now. Absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, and there's so many cool comics to buy. And I think this is the point I think Critical is making, is that the corporate model is really going away because, of course, Diamond lost its monopoly, went bankrupt a couple years after 2020. And most people who are buying comics, well, not say most, but a lot of people who are buying comics do not go to the local comic book shop. They're going to the indie scene. Of course, a lot of people are buying manga. You've got that time of the year where all of the comic book pros really cope and sieve and draw over the failing comic book industry by uplifting manga as like all graphic novel sales, when that really isn't the case. Buying floppies is a bit of an antiquated model for a lot of people, and a lot of people buy online through the independent scene. That's why Fiendish is on track to make $30,000. Of course, Death Shroud is made just under like 50. And of course, there's a bunch of comics. Edwin Boyette is probably the best guy to follow if you want all the numbers on basically all of the major indie projects, and he does fantastic.
At least the
work.
ones in this general sphere.
Yeah,
I'll say
exactly.
that for sure. Like he definitely
Yep.
follows everything going on in this general sphere super closely, and he is incredibly diligent about providing accurate information and providing it in context as well, because data is only helpful. Numbers are only helpful when presented in context. And I'm going to segue that into what we're talking about here. So, to be clear, I have nothing against Thinking Critical. I think he's a great guy. I've been on his channel before, though he wasn't on that stream. I was actually there with Aaron Sparrow and several other guys, including Eric O'Sullivan, a bunch of fantastic people talking about like our the topic was like our favorite or like the best comics so far of 2025. But what I wanted to push back against, or rather not even necessarily push back, I wanted to encourage the emphasis of context and nuance here, because what he says here about Iron Man not making it past 10 issues or Captain America not making it past 15. Yes, and there is something actually to be said about that, but I don't think it's for it to be accurate. I don't think it's actually tying it directly into the health of the industry. I think it's an issue rather that's been part of the industry and embedded there for a very long time. So to provide context, Iron Man and Captain America prior to the MCU were like B-listers. Yes, they had had ongoings. Both had had, longer running runs and things like that prior to the MCU. However, they were considered B-listers, and it is not uncommon at all for both of them to have fairly short or middling runs. And that's not a good thing, but that's not something that's unique to now. That's not something that's unique to like the last 5 or 6 years. That's something that's been a problem for a while. I think that it is a genuine issue. I think the emphasis, though, that I would place there is the onus was on Marvel Studios, or Marvel Publishing rather, to not do a better job about cross promoting their comic books with the success of the movies. So you think back to the first 3 phases of the MCU, right? When they were just kind of crapping out billion-dollar films like it was nothing, and doing a fantastic job because the movies were fun. They were doing very well, and deservedly so. They weren't pushing the comic books at that time. When the Iron Man films and when the Captain America films and when the Avengers films that featured both characters were doing incredibly well, they weren't pushing those books. And so that lack of sales, especially now when you have neither character in the MCU, an MCU that at present nobody's really invested in anymore, that's really a snowball effect. So that is less I think, if we want to be super accurate and intellectually honest about it, I think that's more of a statement on just the lack of business sense and a problem with the comic book industry as a whole rather than more of a modern comic book industry issue, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. And the fact that like Iron Man doesn't have an ongoing series that started with the MCU and isn't doing like millions in sales is
Their books
so
weren't even doing great when
yeah.
the Iron Man and Captain America movies were doing great, and
Yeah, and
that's even more pathetic.
yeah, and I love though I grew up on those movies and the fact that like they didn't bundle a book that followed the plot with the DVD sales. If I had one of those when I was 10, I probably would be reading Iron Man comics to this day, especially if they didn't try to do the Ironheart stuff. But it's
Correct.
completely divorced from, the MCU and the comic and Marvel comics are completely divorced from each other. And within the MCU, especially the modern one, they're all completely separate from each other. They don't have the
Mhm.
writers collaborate or read the books or anything. So this idea, and this is, I think, was what Student of God is saying really succinctly, is they don't care about the comics. It's just an IP
That's true.
farm. Exactly.
That's true.
And when you have that
They don't
mindset,
put any
yeah,
the the baffling thing there, take the Rippaverse for example. We tried to, just with the little expansion we've had into the animation sphere, right? Which isn't much yet, emphasis on yet. Um, we tried to cross promote and make sure we're tying in our animated trailers or animated shorts in with the books that are associated with them. Why would you not do that? Maybe people are more interested
yeah,
in animation, but maybe the animation's cool enough that if they
yeah.
saw the book, they would get the book.
And what
The
one
movies
thing
are
I
the same
love,
way with Marvel and DC.
yeah, no, one thing I love about the Isom 2 trailer is that a lot of those scenes of the fight that Alpha Core and Yaira have, like, are straight from Isom number one.
Yeah.
And like you
With a
know that
little
if
bit
you're
of embellishment, like, we
yeah,
put a
but
little bit of, like,
that's
animated flair on there, but
that's
it
what you have
makes
to
it
do.
fun, it makes it poppy.
Exactly. That's I mean, it's what you have to do for animation is you have to
Yeah.
add stuff to it. So basically, but you're saying, hey, this is the storyboard, and then we're just working with that. And that was the mindset with a lot of the Isom 2 trailer. And then as someone who like read Isom 1 is like really hyped for Isom 2, seeing that trailer, it's like, oh man, I'm all in on that. And that's the mindset that you guys have at the Rippaverse. And of course, I think what we'll do is we'll go to um the I think we'll go to when he talks about the Rippaverse because this is
Well,
like
and again, to be clear,
yeah,
Thinking Critical is very knowledgeable. He knows comics. He actually reads comics. There are a lot of people that talk about comics and don't read comics. I
yeah,
just wanted to add an additional layer of context there for those 2 points specifically when he brought up Iron Man and Captain America,
yeah.
because
And I think
those characters are characters that traditionally haven't done great for a very long time in terms of the comics. They tend to have very short, very middling runs within the last decade and a half or so.
yeah, and like we established, Marvel, I guess Disney didn't do anything,
No, and that's
to
entirely on them. And that
yeah,
was their game to lose because they could have marketed and pushed those characters' books easily. Like, just even put up I don't know, a 30-second trailer, like right before your movie starts. And when
well, I think the best thing to do when the MCU was launching, if you bundled like you buy the DVD, here's an issue of Captain America, or here's an issue of Iron Man, and that would have gotten some conversion. And it would have been decently simple. Didn't even think to do that, but we'll shift away from talking about Marvel and DC being complete failures right now. And of course, doing with God saying Diamond pretty much has $3 million of image money that they are never getting back. How much money did Marvel and DC lose because of Diamond? Probably a decent amount. I couldn't tell you those exact numbers, but it's just indicative that I mean the comic books really are there as like a tax write off in an IP farm, rather than rather than a passionate creative industry. So the corporates really just do not care about the comic book industry. That's Marvel and DC. It's just really there so that way they can keep using the names and have licenses out for the movies. But we'll get into what Thinking Critical has to say about the Rippaverse in the context of what the heck happened to comics.
suits, no notes, just raw, passionate storytelling. So safety matters. You start discovering what actually does. This is comics with no safety net, no suits, no notes, just raw, passionate storytelling, the kind Marvel would never approve, but readers are lining up to support. The corporate machine is recycling 90s gimmicks. The outsiders, they're building something real. These aren't just indie comics. These are rebellion in 24 pages. Eric July was able to cultivate an audience on YouTube. And now he essentially has an indie comic publishing empire with multiple franchises, his own warehouse, his own publishing strategy, and his very own e-commerce retail site where he doesn't even have to go through Kickstarter anymore. And he's been poaching big two talent like Chuck Dixon and Mike Barron for years now. Common America started out as a franchise on Indiegogo, and now they're opening up pop-up shops in Japan. Marvel Comics can't move graphic novels in the United States, let alone in Japan, the literal biggest comic book market in the entire world. DC Comics doesn't even have a footprint there.
Yeah, and I'll add to this with Common America. The Japanese fandom or fan base in for Common America is massive. They actually have they have fan comics. They have like for Comic Cat, there are fans that made their own fan comics and sold them at their conventions. That's how passionate they are. Of course, you have all these translations as well. Big reason for that is Common America really leans into the manga style, and I've talked about that on everything I reviewed. And as someone, I love, anime, I love manga, like it really vibes with me. And of course, Tim Lim does a fantastic job of with his art, and he really melds together some pretty choice elements from the American style as well, but integrates it really well with the manga style. But the character designs, the way their personalities are, and of course just like the structure of the Common America team, it takes a lot of cues from manga, which is why it's so popular. And I do think the Japanese like the American patriotism. That's a kind of a shtick in anime. You'll see, like, so I think
I love
all
the Japanese's portrayal of like all American women.
Yeah, so be the American the Japanese think you are. That's the meme.
Exactly. That's the current meme. Yeah.
Yeah. So all that was like the perfect whirlwind, and they've really leaned into it. And of course, it really helps when you have consistent releases to build a fan base, because there's over 10 volumes of Common America. Manga is on the way. Definitely looking forward to reading that one. And again, that's another thing that's like explicitly like it's drawn left to right. It's going to be black and white.
And that one.
And I backed that one as well. Really excited to read that one. And of course, you got like the weekly comics. So they are very consistent, iconic comics. And they've got a bunch of stuff that they are doing. So Student Guy saying in the 90s, most characters had a 50 plus comic run. And I think
many did. Many did. Some did not.
I think we'll get rid of that video because that's really all we wanted to talk about. There is that I think that the point is that with the Rippaverse, and we can add the show the screen here. Of course, this is Norfolka Glorious Death, and this is of course the website, and I've shown this off a whole bunch. You've got the character screens. This is Dakari. You guys have got like comic book directories of your books, and of course I think here I was going to tell you this explicitly. You need to put some spaces between band Norfolka alongside and Valdon for
I can't tell from there.
Yeah.
Can you zoom in?
Yeah, I can.
Sometimes the formatting on the website is weird and it doesn't take into account.
Yeah.
So that's a formatting thing. So there is actually a space there.
It just does. Oh yeah, I see
it'll
that.
Have
like
to, it'll have to be double spaced in order for it to look like a normal space.
Yeah,
it's a weird thing. I'll make a note of it though.
Yeah, but that's like a really minor thing though, and stuff on websites is always like can be fixed so easily. It's just the print errors that are always really annoying to fix. Like because when something goes out, you get it, like you order 100, in your case like 1,000 copies of something as an error. It's like you got to reprint all the books. That's a much bigger hit. But anyway, you have the fact that the Rippaverse operates completely outside of any distribution. It means you guys get to do what you want, and what you want to do is make books that people want to read. That's why ISA made over $3 million. It's why you're consistently making six figures with these books. Of course, Norfolk the Glorious Steph is currently at almost $200,000, and the fact of the matter is that these books aren't net ridiculously expensive. You can get a $20 book, and most people just choose to get the mass print cover D. And that's it. That's the way a lot of people go about it. So when ISIB 1 was
Because they're readers,
$35,
they don't care as
yeah,
much about the cover. They just want the cheapest option to
yeah,
keep up with the
exactly.
story and
Yeah, and
enjoy the story, and that's perfectly fine. That's exactly
yeah.
why we have that cover.
And then you've got all the stuff for the fans. One of the things I'm super interested in, and I'm getting everything for this one
We
because
appreciate you.
it just had to. That is right there. But yeah, I'm really interested in these vinyls, and I'm definitely going to play the vinyls because I have, if you see behind me there, that's where I film. That's where I'm filming all my videos now. Got to do some reviews, but I've done one episode of Braxcast so far of that setup. So I'm gonna get a record player. Like I'll actually put the record on and I'll actually play it. And I believe these would be 45s, right? Not 33 and a third. Right. So what's
I don't remember.
okay?
I'll be
But
honest, I
any
don't remember. I'm
yeah
I'm not a audiophile when it comes to
yeah.
like the ins and outs of all of that. I would be the wrong person to ask, and I refuse to speak on something out of ignorance.
Yeah,
So
no, that's all good. It's just that these look like they'd be 45s, which is like a regular full size vinyl. I'm not the most knowledgeable person on this, but this is more like a collectible because you want to listen to music, you listen to it on Spotify. Most people
yeah.
do, and I listened to the song a bunch on Spotify, and I listened to Dan Vasque's cover because it auto played. He did a cover of "Make a Man Out of You," and he's a really good singer.
Oh
So
yeah.
like his
Dan
his
Vasquez is
vocals,
fantastic.
yeah, his vocals really shine on this track, and it was just such a cool event to have for the fans. It's like you don't have to go through a board meeting and go through his social media history, and you find one uncouth thing. Oh, we can't work with him; it'd be bad for the fans. It's like you guys, like, hey, we're cool, let's do it. And we'll have a lot of fun. And the fans absolutely loved it. Of course, Garfield's in the chat, and he said, he's playing that on repeat. I mean, it got to number 7 on the Billboard, and of course, it kind of snuffed you guys. But the whole point there is that there is a passionate fan base, and this fan base is formed around the Rippaverse because you guys do not operate in the way that the corps do. And that is really what people are looking for and craving in their entertainment because all the corporate bureaucratic nonsense exists in basically every societal institution. And it's getting away from that is where the appeal is. And the internet allows people who operate outside of the corporations to just go directly to the consumer. And that's really what the beauty is. And that's why Diamond went bankrupt, is because the people who were going to the local comic book shops and buying comics and making Diamond some money aren't doing that anymore. And Diamond lost the stranglehold they had with DC, Marvel, Image, and they had to declare bankruptcy on that basis because they really existed as being a middleman for the comic book industry, and the comic book industry just doesn't really operate outside of the LCS nearly as much as it used to. It still does for a decent amount. Of course, you still got a bunch of stuff that releases through local comic book shops, and people go and buy stuff from Image or Dark Horse, and even some people, like to read some Marvel and DC series. It might be like a Nightwing here or a Batman there. I think it's like the Batman stuff that people were really hanging on to reading from last I remember. But a lot of people are just not invested in going to the LCS. It's just the indie scene, and it's because there's that more, I don't want to say intimate, but it's just a better line of sight that the consumer has with the creative, and the internet has really changed the framing of the way people and consume their content. People want to have some sort of relationship, even if it's parasocial, with the creatives, with the people that they're working on. They want to know who's making their books. They want to have that direct line of sight. And the people who are, the independents want that as well. And that's why you have these, of course, they're going to be smaller niches than having the entire industry, but it's going to be a much more passionate fan base. And that's really the shift that's happening in the comic book industry. It's the reason why the corps are going away, except for like Viz Media, which distributes basically all of Shonen's manga. They're going to stick around because people buy their stuff. But even so, a lot of people are very passionate about the mangakas, the individual manga artists and stuff like that. So really, the whole point is that there is this massive shift in the way the industry is doing business, and I think the Rippaverse has been a pretty big part of that, especially with ISO #1. It really helped put a lot of eyes on this idea of crowdfunding, and that's what people want to do. But that's really all I have to say. Of course, Super guys asking about the holdup on Salvage PI. Would love to have that in my hands. Is it because of Bart? I think Bart Sears.
It's actually Bart Sears. No, there's no holdup on Salvage outside of maybe you personally are very much looking forward to that book, which more power to you. And I don't blame you because I really loved the short story in Ripazine 1. No, it's just a matter that we have other books in the lineup planned for release first before we release Salvage. So Salvage is still coming. Lethal Force is still coming. As is Sersha. So worry not. We have several. In fact, probably I'm sure in our next Ripazine we'll have previews for some of our upcoming big books. So look forward to that.
I'm excited for that one. But yeah, Sersha and Salvage, because John, and like right, you read his Pokemon card, that's his last name. He's John Salvage, which I think is pretty cool. And the super powered hearing is a really cool thing. Like, I'm excited to see how that plays out, especially like in a longer drawn out book where it's more than just basically like the first like scene. We actually will get the full story and see how his super powered hearing and like his like blade hat is happening. Of course, Garfield is just like me. We're still waiting for Alpha Core 2. And it's
Alpha
coming.
Core 2 is close. Trust me, it's close.
It's not close.
I'm seeing
enough.
I'm seeing colored pages come in. It's close.
Yeah, it's not close enough. That's all I'm going to say.
Well,
but yeah,
appreciate your patience.
It is what it is. I do have the patience, but the patience is starting to run just like a tiny bit thin. But that's only because I love Dixon and Joe Bennett so much. So it's really like, I can't wait to read Alpha Core 2. But anyway, Student God says that Rippaverse needs to make their own comics. Zaid Comics is about to start doing that. Pete from Alterna has shown that it's pretty cheap now with technology. And I think that's something that you guys have discussed. Like being your own printer. And I think that would be like, fantastic. It gives you more control over if errors happen and if you're working, if the people who do the printing and the people who do the pre-pressing are, working on this, are, basically part of the same team under the same umbrella. It makes it a lot easier to catch errors.
So a lot of that's a matter of scale. For us to be our own printer at the volume that we print is a far more difficult thing. So right now it's still not in the cards. That is something that I know Eric has mentioned on stream that he would entertain if we got to the point where we could justify it, because that's an extra expense, right? It's not like we could just set up a freaking Xerox printer in our warehouse and be like, cool, now we're our own printer. It doesn't work that way. We'd have to set up our own printing press. And that would require more real estate as well. So we'd have to get our own warehouse that is dedicated strictly for the printing press, machines and all of that. So that's a whole other matter. There's a lot of logistics to it. But it is something I know that Eric is thinking about for down the road. Should we get to that point? So it's a matter of scale. It's very difficult to handle all of that on your own when you are printing at the volume that we are. So we're printing at pretty high volume, and we have really good printing deals with our printers because of the volume that we print at. So it would be to take into account the real estate that we would need, the machinery we would need, the extra labor we would need, plus the materials we would need. There's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah, it's very understandable. So you guys are like, printing probably you guys have sold over 200,000 books, so you're
Yeah,
probably printing
and props to Zaid for freaking being on track to doing that the dang selves. Like that's
yeah.
fantastic. That's
Yeah.
huge. That's
Yeah, no,
that's more autonomy. Like that's
yes.
you removing more middlemen. That's you being even more independent. That's fantastic. We're just because of the volume that we print at, we're not able to do that just yet.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Hopefully, you guys get there one day, and eventually, you're going to be Rippa's going to be his own banker. Or, Rippa Coin is going to come soon, right?
Rip a coin. Yeah,
Yeah, Rippa
sure.
Coin, Rippa Zon, all those sorts of things. But I think eventually, that's something that really ought to happen, and especially if you integrate that with Rippa Send. Where if you have all the logistics to run your own printer, it can be like, hey, we can print and distribute your book for you. And I think that's a
Yeah.
long-term thing for Ripasend, and that would justify like making that investment if you're not only using it to print your own stuff, but you're using it to print other people's stuff as well. And then, like I said, having that full-on, I think vertical integration is the way to put it, is
Yeah.
going to be the best long-term thing, and it insulates you from the whims of other corporations. Because I'm sure the printers that you work with are all really nice, but they're still an external company, and they can choose to not do business with you, and that leaves you, SOL. But
The
if you're
more
going,
autonomy you can have,
yeah,
if you can do it, the better. Plain and simple.
exactly. So Roberto Viacabo is saying hello,
Hello.
back to you. So I was going to be like, hey, let's speculate, because I was going to speculate on like Norfolka. And of course, like tomorrow's episode, I'm going to be talking about Michael Copper and Lillian Renashi, because I think The Cursed and the Black-Eyed Club are going to be the next two books on the release schedule. Of course, and you're not going to say anything, NDA. But that's going to be tomorrow's episode of Braxcast, where I'll get their Dokemon cards, I'll go through their appearances, and probably ISIB 1. I think Blood Roof is their most prominent, and of course Alpha Core #1 as well. I love how they're shaping up as villains, and I definitely want to talk about them a good little bit, especially since this is kind of like we don't have any new releases right now. It's a bit of a lull in the release schedule, but I'm sure it's going to pick up as the time goes on. So let's see. So Mike has bad knees. Of course, a regular in the in the streams is saying hello to you. Everything is going fantastic. And really didn't have anything else to talk about. I think thinking critical. Don't have anything against him. I think
No, not at all. Again,
yeah.
I want to be very clear. I think he's fantastic. I appreciate that he's one of the few people out there that talks about comics, that actually reads comics. A
Yeah.
lot of people talk out their butts and just like read an article off of Screen Rant or off of whatever website, and then try to form an opinion on a comic book that they didn't read. Whereas he actually reads comic books, which is kind of important if you're going to have any level of intellectual honesty.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So yeah,
Definitely.
I appreciate him, and I appreciate the streams that he puts on. Again, I was blessed enough and fortunate enough to be able to be on one of them. It's like a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. I can't remember. I don't know when I am anymore. Time is flying by so fast. I mean, next weekend is going to be Bell County Comic Con that we'll be at. And then we've got a couple more conventions coming up this year. And before we know it, it's going to be MegaCon Orlando again. So
Yeah, I mean,
time just kind of zips by for me.
It does, man. I'm excited for Bell County Comic Con to see what gets announced. And of course, I want to show up to one of these cons one day. But
You should.
yeah, definitely. It's just not in the cards for me right now because I don't have the vacation time.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but when I do and everything lines up, I'm going to go to one of the cons, and I'm not sure if I'll bring a stack of books to sign, but I definitely want to bring the people cover that I have, because I want to get someone to draw the horsemen and the people fighting each other, because I think that would be so epic.
I want to clarify something from Garfield Bizarre Adventure here on his comment. We don't have a shared booth. We're just both at the convention, and there's a kind of a collaborative thing going on with the challenge coin. If you attend there are two different ones. One of them you get if you attend the after party on Saturday, if I remember correctly. And then the other one, I forget, it's like a scavenger hunt type of a thing. But if you're one of the first 10,000 attendees at the event. Then you also get an exclusive comic book. I think that's correct. Please don't quote me, but we aren't sharing a booth. I wish that would have played out that way, but we got our booth much later than they did, so we're unfortunately not like right next to each other. Hopefully, maybe next year, maybe 2026. I think that would be amazing because I would love to hang out more with like Doug Ernst and the rest of the Common America crew, as well as Doug Ernst and his Soul Finder stuff.
Yeah. Doug Ernst is the writer of Soul Finder, and Soul Finder exists in the same universe as Common America. So you'll actually have, I believe it's Father Redder, because I think they're Catholic, and I mean I have my issues with the Roman Catholic Church, but that's neither here nor there. But I believe they're Catholic priests, and they're also exorcists and soldiers, and that's like the whole point of Soul Finder. And you'll have those characters actually show up in Common America, which is pretty cool. And of course, you have Black Ops as well, and that it all exists in one universe. And I haven't done reviews on Soul Finder. I'm behind on Soul Finder. I think I've read the first 2 issues a long time ago. So I need to get those and catch up on everything, and then I'll do a big old overview of that. But that's down the cards. But I liked what he put out with Soul Finder of what I've read, and I love the crossovers of those characters in Common America. So do great stuff at Iconic Comics. Really happy to see that. I did talk about that on Braxcast that that you guys are going to be at Bell County Comic Con, and I love that you guys are on the con scene because that's part of the bread and butter of the comic book industry is going to the cons and actually meeting with the fans.
So for indies, it depends, I guess. So not all indies have the convention scene, the con circuit as their bread and butter. It's something, however, we're putting a lot of emphasis on and trying to really like expand into because it allows us to grow outside of just this online sphere and circle that we've been in thus far for our first 3 years. We're able to tap another audience that maybe they don't even really watch YouTube. Maybe they like, for example, at Dallas Fan Expo, Sunday, Dallas Fan Expo this year was a very busy day, and the vast majority of the new customers, like new buyers that we had, first time buyers, had never heard of us before. They had no idea who we were. They don't watch YouTube, so they don't know who Eric is. They just saw it. They happened to walk by our booth because we were in a good traffic area, and we pitched them our work. We pitched them our universe, and it's important because that's how you grow your demographic. That's how you get new eyes instead of locking yourself into just one sphere. Because that's a good. Eventually, you're going to stop growing if you only focus on one sphere. You need to expand beyond that. You need to get in front of fresh eyes. You need to get in front of new people that aren't connected necessarily to the sphere you're already within. Then maybe they end up getting brought into that sphere, but it's important in order to grow your business to continue to get new readers. And that's one of the reasons why indies like us over the Rippaverse, like the Iconic Comics guys, like Paul Thayer over with Project Neosis, like Reamy with Fiendish, Von Coleman with Phenomenova, etc. Like that's why it's important to go to the cons whenever you can make it work, because you will inevitably get in front of people who are just there because they want comics.
Yeah, no, I agree. And when I said bread and butter, I'm saying like part of comic book culture, like nerd culture in general, is going to the cons. So it's not necessarily like, oh, all of your money, and you can talk about them being profitable. Soon the God saying to go to Heroes Con. Garfield's looking forward
I would
to.
love to go to Heroes Con. I have a couple of artist friends who have been pestering me in the best of ways to try and get us over to Heroes Con. Trust me, I want to go there.
Definitely. And Mike Has Bad Knees is asking, like, traveling to booths and renting them. It's expensive. Is that profitable? So do you guys like measure it in terms of like
It really
financial?
depends.
Yeah.
So, it depends on the con, because the more high profile the con, the convention runners know that, and so they charge more per square foot for your booth fee, right? However, you have to balance that with what you see as your expected, maybe minimum in terms of traffic and what you think you can make off of that. And so there are two ways to look at it. One, if you're looking at it at a strictly black or red financial fiscal perspective, then there are going to be some cons that you go to maybe there wasn't a profit, or maybe there wasn't much of a profit on its face. However, there is still a benefit to that because you're still getting in front of new eyes. And there's a lot of power in word of mouth. And so a lot of times you'll have creators still go to conventions, whether it's ourselves or anybody else in the indie sphere, still go to conventions, even if they don't necessarily make as much as they would have liked. They still do it because they know intrinsically they're going to get in front of fresh eyes. They're going to grow their audience organically that way. And inevitably, that's going to benefit them in the long run. They'll take maybe a short term loss for a long term gain.
Yeah, no, and that's pretty typical for a lot of business models. I mean, Microsoft and Sony will sell you their consoles at a loss, but you buy games,
Correct.
and then they take a bit off of the top for each game they sell, and you buy. It takes about 7 games, and then they're making money off of you. That's the strategy for cons as well. So it's a really interesting thing, talking about the economics of it. But for me, the cons are really nice as like a cultural thing, which is why I want to go to some comic book ones. It's just things really haven't been like lining up in my life. Hopefully, God willing, it will. And I'll go to a con that you guys go to, and we can meet in person. And you can see me in person, and I'll meet Eric and all those guys, and it'll be really really interesting to do. But but the bigger thing is going to a con not just to see stuff I know, but the stuff that I don't know. I could just walk around and meet. Hey, here's my comic book. Oh, I like it. Let me buy it, and we can talk about comic books I like and stuff like that, and we can have all of that. So it's a cultural event, and
Yeah.
culture is a very important thing. And the cons are really things that foster culture. So having good cons and having good people at the cons is a really important thing, and that's the bigger point with the con
Agreed.
scene. That's why people love them as events. And of course, as a fan, I always love when stuff gets announced at cons. You guys haven't really done that for the past couple, but Horseman was announced at first MegaCon you guys went to. That was an awesome
Yeah.
thing to happen. So hopefully more stuff like that happens. But let's see.
Zalen was announced to the con as well.
Oh yeah, I forget about that. But Roberto is asking if you guys have any plans to come to Canada, Toronto, maybe.
At present, we don't. That could always change, but at least at the moment, we don't have any plans in the immediacy to go up north to the Great White North, as it is. It's a lot more difficult, especially with when we go to cons. We're not just a single self-published individual who maybe only needs X amount of square footage. We go and we bring several people with us. We bring a lot of product with us. We require a fair amount of square footage for our booths, right? That also, that means travel expenses. That means, hotel expenses. That means a lot of things. And we would love to get to a point where we can go to a lot of different cons. So not just to our neighbors in Canada, but maybe at some point in the UK, or maybe we can grow an Eastern audience, and at some point we go to Tokyo Con or something like that. Who knows? That's probably further down the road, but we would love to get there. It's just a matter of timing and a matter of making it make sense for where we're at, especially right now.
Yeah, no, that makes a whole bunch of sense. Con, when you're operating at your scale, so it's a lot harder to do those sorts of things. Um, but yeah, so having like a big booth where you're selling a lot of product and you have, maybe 5 people there, it requires a lot more. And doing that internationally is going to be a much more of a logistical nightmare because, if you get like a big Sprinter van and you can fit all your stuff in, and drive across the country, that's one thing. But to ship it across the world, that becomes a lot more strenuous. And of course, shipping anything internationally is a complete nightmare because customs, they just love to make your life hard. That's the one thing that they do, is that they make it complicated for you to like ship anything.
Oh.
So even like into Canada. So I think, yeah, Roberto said the answer made sense, but hopefully that actually happens. I think Canada would be pretty reasonable for you guys to go through because you could just.
Certainly more so than going to the UK or Japan.
Yes, exactly. But let's see. So I think we'll close this out because we've had a really good conversation so far with the Mighty Golden Patriot. And thank you for coming on. So this is closing tomorrow, or not tomorrow. It's on the 27th, I believe.
It's closing Sunday morning at 8 a.m.
Yeah, so Sunday morning, 8 a.m. Is when you'll be able to get in on the campaign. I got in on this a bit later. Definitely excited to read this one. Of course, this book was talked about a lot before it came out. Of course, you have to pay your artist shirt as a bit of a homage to all of the stuff that went down around that. But, I'm not here to talk about that. Here to talk about this really cool book, and I think this is definitely one I'm going to be excited to read. Dillard is a really good artist. I'm not sure about Yellow Flash's writing. I know he's had a lot of takes on the modern comic and movie industries that make a lot of sense. So hopefully it's going to be a pretty interesting read. But Dillard's got fantastic art, and this does seem like it's going to be profitable for him to do the second issue and make this into an ongoing series. And of course, it's like a World War II Zentai character, which is pretty cool. So I imagine it's going to be a fun book to read, and it's probably going to sell around 5,000 books. I'm not sure if it's going to hit that on the counter, but this book is definitely going to be on sale after the campaign, as is the case with Achromatic Chronicles Green. Jay David did a really good job on Blue and Green. I loved those books. I reviewed those. It's already like 5 months ago.
He nailed his target audience like really well.
Yeah, now honestly, just as a comic in general, I liked it. Of course, like I'm not like a preteen, so I'm not the target audience, but it's just a fun book to read. It was well structured, in both Blue and Green, and the way they overlap and cross into each other was actually done really, really well. So absolutely fantastic stuff that is going on over at Rippaverse. Only thing that I'm not really chomping at the bit to get is Waiting for Neurotic. And I said this before, I'm not the biggest fan of Gary. I've watched maybe a couple of his videos, but it's not like I don't really need to read an autobiography of his. But that's something against him.
Sure, it's not for everybody.
Yeah, but Death Shroud is absolutely like looking fantastic. I backed this one, and it's probably. I mean, this one's got another month to go, so it's probably going to hit that 50K mark. Definitely made like what 32,000 on the Kickstarter. So it's this is of course that without shipping and the fees included, which is typical for the other crowdfunding platforms. So definitely doing well. And I think any indie project that can make 5 figures is really successful, because you've got John. I always forget John's long box. I think it's John Hua.
Yeah, John's long box.
Yeah, John's long box, and he is he's in the 4-figure range with Heroic Tales, and that's fantastic. But that's
a lot of indies don't get there.
Yeah, a lot of indies don't even get there. And I certainly haven't gotten there with. I mean, I haven't gotten there with selling my books. But I haven't made comics yet. One day I want to get into that. But that is that's like I guess a bit more of a long-term thing for me. I've written 2 novels, and I think the next one I'm going to publish next month, which it's overwhelming that it's almost August already. Man, these June and July have just flown on by. But that is the plan there. But it's really, really cool to see Rippaverse starting to get more stuff out to the readers. And yeah, 100K books are the top 1% of crowdfunding. And I would say it's probably even less than 1%.
It's less than 1% in terms of the number of crowdfunding specifically books that break into 6 figures. Now, again, Rippaverse and Rippaverse are not crowdfunding. To be very clear, they're just a pre-order system. The books are done. The books are made. But that is absolutely accurate, Garfield, that 100K books, that's exceedingly rare comparative to the number of books that are put out there in the crowdfunding scene.
Yeah, and that's the same thing with like novels as well. Most novels don't break out and sell, more than a dozen books, even by the big publishers. Like Penguin, like most of Penguin's books don't do that. I think like I've been able over the course of a couple of years sold more books than a lot of books that happen on Penguin. And I'm so bad at marketing myself. But anyway, I really don't have anything else to talk about. Was going to be speculating on a bunch of stuff, but we just ended up nerding out about the comic industry. Of course, I think Thinking Critical made a pretty good video, and we watched what was relevant of that. So thanks to him for making that video, and of course, seems to be like a pretty good guy. But that's my closeout statement. If you got anything else to say, add it now, or I would say forever hold your peace.
Guys, we have a lot more coming up at you pretty darn fast for content and new books and such. So be on the lookout for that in the very, very near future. If you didn't catch it live, please consider checking the VOD of my stream that I hosted with Kanan, our art director, and Chad, the creator of Death Shroud. We did a 2-hour stream earlier this afternoon. It was a ton of fun. It was all creative talk. It was all talking about planning out the story, inspirations, approach to the art, all of that. It's nothing but creative stuff. So I would highly encourage people to check that out. It was an absolute blast to be a part of.
Yeah, fantastic. I'll definitely have to check out that VOD. But yeah, really excited to see what's coming up next. But plenty of stuff to talk about with the Rippaverse. I got like all these Dokumon cards and past comic books. I really want to talk about Michael and Lillian because I think they're next on the release schedule, the way the sauces are talking about. But I can nerd out all night. That is all I have. Hopefully, you guys have a good weekend, but we are out of here. And that's it.